Good morning, good morning, good morning from the Philippines. Yoki, 5 Bytes Shalom. Segment 2 about the plane crash. Sorry for the segments, but it seems like I've tried at least 7, 8 times to do it all in one, and it never ever stays in my phone or my tablet. I borrowed a phone, didn't stay in there either. I don't know what it is, but segment 1 went successfully, so we'll see about segment 2. Excuse me. In the first video, we got through all the stuff leading up to the getting up in the air, and now we're up in the air. And to set the scene, you got a bunch of tired missionaries, 10 days in the jungles, 3 days, ran out of supplies, almost ran out of water at the end of the trip because the typhoon, or the Hurricane Mitch, which you can Google, Hurricane Mitch, 1998, October 27 through the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. I mean, it lasted for 2 weeks in that region, and it was huge. It was huge. Category 5. Anyway, we get up in the morning and it was broken clouds. It was nice, and we lifted off and then got up in the air and it got cool because there was no air conditioning in that plane. It was a bigger plane. It wasn't some small, Cessna. It was a bigger plane, but there was no air conditioning. And when we got up in the air after being in the heat and being drained by that for 10 days, we, we all fell asleep. I mean, everybody just passed out of sleep. I mean, the best rest I think I'd had in months before that. And so we were all sound asleep. And then for some reason I woke up. And we lifted off at 12:30. It was about 1 o'clock, 1:10. I remember looking at my watch a couple of times. Just 1 second before impact, I looked at my watch, it was 1:15. But they told us we were going to dive down through the canopy of broken clouds and then level off and then look for our strip. This pilot had been there, landed on that strip for 13 years. It's a strip in the mountains inside a volcanic rim. There's 13 cities around the edge of the lake, and we were coming in, and he was familiar. But to this day, it was he was disoriented, lost. He couldn't see anything recognizable. Excuse me. Although he was very familiar, like I said, the direction, the coordinates, the headings. He was right on track everywhere on all that. But we were a little bit earlier than he thought we were. And when I say earlier, we were not as far as we should have been from headwind or whatever. But the plane got delayed just a couple of kilometers from where we should have been. And then there was like this fog layer of soup, which is not uncommon, and he's flying by altimeter. There's no ground-to-air radio, there's no satellite communications, there's no GPR, LiDAR, any of that stuff. He was using his cell phone and talking to people on the ground at the strip saying, "Can you hear us? Do you see us?" And, there was the founder and his military liaison and a guy who was doing a documentary, his son-in-law, Chris. They all got up out of their seats and went up into the cockpit, and they were all looking, trying to see any kind of signs to tell them where they were. And then I looked, and I could see we were below the canopy now, and I could see the ground coming up. And I thought, we're landing. Of course, the ground's not coming up. We're going down. And then boom. Boom, boom. I mean, 3 big, hard blasts. The first one just seemed like, we landed really hard and the front wheels hit first, and that's what I thought. And then the second boom and the floorboard came up, and I felt the seats behind me rolling forward, literally curling up in a ball. And I really should add some graphics, but the back seats were coming apart, ripping out of the floor and rolling forward like a roll, like a cinnamon roll. And the floorboard came up, and that knocked my legs. One leg went up the wrong way in front of me, one leg went behind me into this wall of wreckage, and It seemed like forever before we stopped, but it wasn't. It was only like 1 or 2 seconds. And then sand and gravel were cascading down through the wreckage on me, and also like a waterfall of jet fuel. And I called out to some people to see if they were okay, and there was only one answer from one person, and that was in the dead last row. I was up more towards the middle of the plane. What happened was the nose of the plane had imploded, and just like a blender had just, sliced everything. And the rear of the plane kind of folded forward and just rolled and wrapped on top of that. And it came into a giant ball of wire and metal and made a cavity, which then filled up with jet fuel. And I was in that, and it wasn't very long. I mean, I remember trying to get out. I had this leg, I could barely see. There was hardly any light. I could barely see this leg in front of me, and I pushed on it to try to get it out of my way gently, because I want to be respectful. I checked the girl next to me. She was dead. Her head was on my shoulder, and she was gone. And then this leg in front of me, and I couldn't get it to move, and I had a burning feeling in the middle of my back. It was really bad. And I followed the leg down to the knee, down to the hip, and it was my leg. And I couldn't feel it. It was numb. It was paralyzed. And so then I tried to find my other leg, and it was behind me. I couldn't even go 3 inches, and I hit a wall of wreckage, steel and stuff, and my leg was buried in that. I couldn't get my seatbelt off, and it was cutting into me. I fought with that for a while and struggled for a while, and then that was it. I remember, because I'd been dead twice before, I just remember saying to, our Father, please don't let this plane burn. If anybody, we've been serving you for over a week, and I pray that nobody here has to taste the flame. And so, he was merciful, and he didn't let the plane catch on fire. I mean, you got a metal plane, all these iron, steel instruments on board, and tools, nuts and bolts and things, and hit an iron mountain, and it was just, there was no reason not to catch on fire, but we didn't. Well, the cavity filled up, and I died. I was being submerged in jet fuel. I was under for over 3 hours in the jet fuel, and then the rescue workers, because the whole slope of the mountain, the backside, was planted in corn, and they heard and saw what happened. A lot of the native, indigenous, I shouldn't say native, they weren't naked, they were indigenous tribes were there, and they all came up there and tried to sort things out, and they drained the cavity, and they were taking bodies and pieces of bodies and laying them together by matching by clothes and trying to put together complete humans and find everybody. And there was only 6 survivors in the last row. It was 6 across, 3 and 3, and they were the only ones that survived. And then there was they got them out, and then they were taking them down the mountain. Those that could, there wasn't a lot of them could walk, I think, because Ross was really bad, his shoulder and arm. Susan had a broken leg. Erica had a broken leg. Christine had a fractured skull and a broken neck, which she didn't know. She knew about the skull, the head injury, because it was right at the temple. And then, Alan, he had a bad cut in his forehead. Looked really bad, but it wasn't that bad. So they got those 6 out in the back, and then started digging down through the wreckage and cutting cables and trying to get everybody out. And when they got to me, there I was, crushed between seats, all twisted up. And, they knew I'd been under jet fuel for, 3 hours. So they didn't expect anything coming out any there. And they didn't try any CPR. They checked me, and I was gone. No pulse, and of course, and so no respiration. And so a little worker, just jeans and a t-shirt and a fireman's hat, grabbed me around the waist under my arms and tried to pull my body up, and when he did, I gasped and opened my eyes and said, I'm thirsty. And he looked at me and almost dropped me. He was so shocked. And then and then he started to pull, and as he was pulling, my back leg, of course, was buried in the wreckage, just a wall of wreckage, and it was just, just crushed in there. I pointed down and said, "Aki, aki, aki," which means here. And so then he looked behind me. His eyes got really big, like, oh my God, there's no way I can hold this big guy. And I can't get him out. So he called for help, and 3 or 4 guys came over, and they worked on that for 5 or 6 minutes, and finally got the wreckage loose enough that they could get my leg out without cutting it off. And then they carried me out and laid me on a cot. And then 6 guys picked me up and started carrying me down the mountain. And when it comes to that, I'll leave what happens from then forward for the 3rd segment, because it's already 10 minutes, 11 minutes. Lots more to come, guys. Lots more to come. I hate to cut it off, but it is. It's getting to be over 11 minutes now. So I'll do segment 3 as soon as I can. God bless you, and make his face shine upon you and give you peace. It's from 5 Bites. Shalom.